Welcome to M Squared TechCast.
It's Mike Brennan.
And Rick Thompson.
And Rick's filling in for Matt Roush, who is out recovering from surgery to his knee. He'll be back sometime in December. Rick is a cannabis expert, and so we thought we'd take this opportunity, since he is, to talk a little bit more about cannabis than we typically do in our monthly cycle. So I invited Mike Skinner to join us today. Mike and I know each other from his days as a co-founder of Ideal Technology Solutions. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about the jungle control, which fits in with this whole cannabis theme, right?
It sure does, and the technology theme too. We go back a long time. I hate to admit how long ago, but
we were just very young back then, like 20 years old or something.
I think
so. No problem.
Well, same as back then. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time and always sort of looking for the new things. When we were in the technology game back there, we were the first ones to bring the cloud back then to the world place, and that's sort of how I fell into jungle control here. Jungle control is really technology, and that it was discovered. The parent company of jungle control is a company called Tigris, and they discovered a couple of new molecules which they got CAS numbers and patents on, and 42 more patents that they applied for, and basically, it's a safe acid and a safe base. So for people that are out there growing, that they know that they use salts to manage, how plants fight off pests and create growth. And so, they found out that it worked pretty well in cannabis, sort of by accident, that one of the co-founders' sons was growing cannabis back about 5 or 6 years ago, and was having some problems with some powdery mildew, and they had these new chemicals that were going through the patenting process, and the guy said, well, I'd like to try it. I'd like to see if it did something for powdery mildew. Lo and behold, week later, had the product up there, and in a couple of days, he had got rid of all his powdery mildew. And, everyone was sort of a little bit stunned because we didn't know what the molecules did. We just know that they act like an acid and a base, but they're safe to human, plant, and animal tissue. So the same guy was pretty curious and started doing some experimentations and got 13 different types of genetics and took them and did side-by-side comparisons and saw that using jungle control as part of his overall nutrient program that they grew bigger and better.
Wow. Well, you were saying when we talked about before we started that you could spill the acid or the base on your hands and it wouldn't do any damage whatsoever, right?
That's what's crazy about this company. Back to the technology side, that there's about $3.5 trillion in acids and bases sold around the world each year.
$3.5 trillion.
But all are harmful and hazardous, or to your lungs, to your eyes, to your ears. So these guys discovered really they figured out how to capture a hydrogen molecule and keep it stable inside of water molecule, and you can put it in your eyes and do all sorts of things that you wouldn't do with regular acids, but it has the same impact on lots of different industries, companies and medical industries. That beyond cannabis, the agricultural industry is exploding with this new technology, and for all my friends that are growing cannabis around Michigan and around the country, they are starting to utilize what we call biostimulants, or plant adjuvants, to improve the nutrient uptake.
Now, in our industry, we use pH up and pH down in order to neutralize water and to get it to the proper level. This is something that would work within the soil itself to accomplish that same effect. Is that right?
It does both. So how I got involved in the company was I own a greenhouse up in Waterford, and we have soil and hydroponic based growing processes. So when I set it up, I have 10,000 positions to grow lettuce heads, and I had 8,000 on one tank and 2,000 so we could test different things. And so, they ran into me and told me to give it a try. So we put some into our 2,000 section of heads of lettuce. And the gentleman who runs my greenhouse, or ran my greenhouse, was a cannabis grower. And, we both sort of called bullshit on the thing. We thought, there's no nutrient value or anything. But in a matter of, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we started doing the side-by-side test and saw the root mass was bigger, the actual lettuces were bigger, and both started shaking our heads. And after, usually it took about 7 weeks to grow from beginning to end, and we got through our whole lettuce at the same size with even better weights in 6 weeks. So we did it a couple more times, and it just piqued my curiosity, and that's how I became involved with the company, because if it made that grow, I just knew there were a lot of other things that were possible.
Mm-hmm.
And just let's get a plug in for your other company. Your primary business is also food related, right?
Well, Tigris, the parent company, that really they're using these molecules that in medicine they, if you have burns or scrapes or cuts, that they, can heal faster. Then in the agricultural business, we're starting to do things on specialty agriculture. We're in the products being sold around the country, and there's some differences. We treat the cannabis product a little bit different. That's called ferocious, a little different than we do the agricultural products, but a lot of the results are the same. So we're in that industry. The company also is working with 8 of the top 10 largest battery companies in the world, replacing sulfuric acid, and the list goes on and on. I think you'll find that Tigris will be one of the large technology companies in Michigan. A 7-year startup now that's raised a lot of money and just starting to commercialize. Built a plant in Madison Heights.
Huh.
Well, that's not that far from here in Royal Oak.
No.
In what stores would our listeners find your product at this point?
That in the Michigan area, that we're probably in about 45 different hydroponic stores. We're also do a big business online with it's junglecontrol.it, and people can buy online. In Europe, we have about 350 stores. It's been out in Europe with hydro gardens. I get them all mixed up. There's a lot of them, but they're in about 300 retailers, and we've continued to, as we've spoke with your earlier guests, that regulatory compliance is always a challenge in trying to find the right way and the right claims, and so that's one of the things where we've employed the right people, and it's going to be a pretty standard product across the United States and Canada here pretty soon.
Huh.
Well, hydroponic growing is more popular now than ever before. And you mentioned that this works pretty much equally well with a soil-based system or with a liquid-based system, which is what hydroponics basically is. Yeah,
basically when you come down to chemistry and technology, and a lot of people that might be listening to this in the cannabis industry, they have their the right MPKs, but just like us, we're always fighting to live. Plants are fighting to live, and there's 2 things they're trying to do. They're trying to replicate cells, and they're trying to fight off people that are trying to eat them. So that's the battle that's going on in all of us all the time. And when I talked about the new unique chemical processes that we have, so we've tied that extra hydrogen into water. So everyone's heard of H2O, and a simple way to put this is H3O, and it's a normal organic kind of
Isn't that heavy water, H3O?
well, there's all sorts of names, but what we do is quite unique, and there are people do this. If you want to get official, we're actually H9O4.
Okay.
So it's a little bit you get into the chemistry, but one of the interesting parts about it is that extra hydrogen molecule. It's in an uncomfortable state right there. So it's always trying to get out. So actually it creates energy, and that energy really does what you're talking about, that in a soil-based and in a hydroponic-based system, it provides for the plants to be more effective in taking up nutrients. So the mitochondria and everything can work better because of, adjuvants. And you'll see that the USDA now, the EPA is now starting to allow these biostimulants and a variety of different names, because it isn't only NPK values that improve growth. It really is a combination of getting the most out of the nutrients so the plants can uptake them and be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, that's the NPK we're referring to. And most gardeners would know that mix, because those 3 numbers appear on the face of almost any garden-style nutrient that you're purchasing, right?
Right.
Yeah, they do. And I think one of the things that I find pretty interesting is now working in the agriculture industry that that when you start to see what cannabis has done for agriculture and agriculture are doing for cannabis, it's symbiotic in that, I think that on the cannabis side, there's a little more scientific portion that, from the people that started growing. But now as cannabis commercializes, it's bringing the two together, and you're starting to see on the traditional agriculture more attention to science here, and how can we improve that, because we got to feed more people. And
well, it makes perfect sense. It's kind of like a Wonder Grow sort of like product, but not the same, right?
Well, it is. We're working with a lot of the big nutrient companies right now, and the Ferocious line that we have, a leaf wash, and when you talked about pH up, pH down, ours is sort of it's a 3.5, and it really doesn't impact pH. It just allows nodular spacing to be tighter, that there's more biomass, and when we look at the world today, and I've been talking a little bit about agriculture and cannabis, hemp comes to mind, and in the agricultural space, I think some people refer to hemp more in the cannabis space, but in my mind, it's an agricultural product under the Farm Bill that just recently passed, that legalized it here and
everywhere in the
United States. Yeah.
Right.
But it's similar to cannabis, but you need to do things a little bit differently. They don't all grow the same. So I think that, people out there that are farmers and, need to just be cautious in terms of making sure how you plant, and some of the mistakes that have made in Washington and other states where, you got male and female plants coming together in the fields that make it difficult.
And suddenly everything's flowering, right? So, yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, there's a lot of farmers in Michigan that are seriously taking a look at hemp, particularly with the fact that the tariffs are hurting soybeans and corn and all the rest. So, but the people that I've talked to that are experts in hemp are saying start out at a really small and kind of really understand what you're doing. Don't start out with 1,000 acres, because it'll be just a gigantic headache.
Well, a couple of things I'd say there that, I've helped some people start from seedlings. It's a shorter season here in Michigan. Right. And so if you can get some seedlings growing before you get them out in the plant, it's, so you have something healthy out there, it's a good idea. And then, that soil, just like, you see, cannabis cultivators using cocoa and other things, that when you're out in the fields, soil comes in lots of different, forms, that there's, sandy and, clay
filled.
And so you really have to understand it. And that's one of the reasons why, jungle control, that it modifies the soil to be able to allow different things. So you have to be a little bit, responsive to what platform you're working in.
Okay. We got about 2 minutes left, so this is where we let you do a shameless plug again for your two companies and tell people how they can find out more.
Well, Jungle Control is junglecontrol.it, and there's a website there. We're on all the Instagram. My background's technology, so you're going to see a lot more of us. We've got a pretty good social platform there, but agriculture, sort of, we fight between which one we want to do. And Tigress is at tigress.com, and we've just received our 2 patents, worldwide patents, in the last 60 days. So, our motto is better everything. We really are working in, spaces, that, we think we can change the world. And, we've, haven't had a website. We've had there's a lot of big companies that might be interested in our technology and put it on a shelf. So we're just going to break out a website in the next 2 weeks. It's been sitting there for about 4 months, and we wanted to make sure we had our act together before we brought it up live. So that'll be explain the rest of it.
Four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life, but LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.